Mute me all the time.
I've done it. There you go. We're live.
Woohoo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the London Mug, our first London Marketo user group of 2021. Yay! Sorry it's been so long. However, we've got a very exciting agenda. But before we reveal the agenda, I wanted to give a warm welcome to all of our regular Mug joiners. So hi to everyone that we recognize, and also welcome to some new London Mug joiners. So shout out to the newbies. I'm not going to give any shout outs, but there's a specific someone I'm asking to join for the last year, and she's here. Yay! Prodding on LinkedIn works. And what do we say? I'm Emily. I'm the co-Mug leader. I have just changed jobs, so I'm now a Marketo consultant at Revenue Pulse Agency. So, yay! And I'll hand it over to my lovely co-host, Adele Miller. Tag you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm Adele Miller. I am currently sat in the world's sunniest room, so I apologise if you cannot even see my skin because I look that white on my own screen. But it's really good to have everyone here. So much the same with Emily, some nice new faces. So thank you so much for making the time to join us. And also the old classics. Zoe, thank you very much for helping us sort out the technical issues at the start. Always a fantastic person to have in any mug. So thank you for joining. Would you like me to take us through today's agenda, Emily, or would you like to do that?
I think you should, because it all happened to you.
Well, everyone's got to look at the side of my face, I'm afraid, because I've got two screens set up. So we're really, really lucky today that we do have 3 guest speakers. One who hopefully you do know very well, who's our very own Kate Doyle there, Senior Marketing Manager over at Adobe. And as I'm sure you're all aware, she is our 3rd organizer of the mug. So she's going to speak to us about Summit, some tips and tricks, and just a quick guide of how we can get the most out of the upcoming event. And then we are extremely honoured to have 2, what I class as Marketo celebrities, really, multiple times round the champion programme. Jules has been on the stage at Summit. I was very lucky to meet Jules as a fellow Brit in America when we went to an event a good few years ago, and we've had some nice times together, let's say. And it's just great to have them here. So they're going to take us through a session that they ran at a previous Marketo Adobe event, and I absolutely loved it. It's all about forms and how to get everything out of them that you can. So it's definitely something that I left with loads of action points from. So it's going to hopefully be something that really gets everyone fired up about forms again. And then at the end, we're just hopefully just going to have a bit of open time, quick chat, see how everyone is, and talk about what we want to do for our next mug sessions as well. So as always, if you can just keep yourselves on mute while the presenters are on. If you have any questions, just whack them in the chat box. I can actually work the chat box on this new platform, so that's all in hand if you need to speak to any of us. And yeah, so please, Kate, please take it away.
Thank you, Adele. So yeah, let me share my screen. I've put literally through together some slides to just show you some of the great stuff that's happening at Summit. Let me see. Can you see my screen?
We can see your full deck at the moment, not in presenter mode. There we go. Looks great. Whew, seamless.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give you an overview of Summit. I know that we're probably also virtual event fatigued, but I do think as a Marketo customer, you can actually get a lot of value from Summit, as there's some really great training workshops that you can get involved in, along with tips and tricks content from our actual customers and some Adobe experts as well. So I think it's a really great opportunity for some of the most amazing content around Marketo Engage. So when's it happening? It is this month. No, it's not this month yet. It's in next month, April, in a few days' time. It's on the 27th and 29th of April. So we also have a live EMEA session happening on the 28th of April from 10 to 6. So this means that, if there's sessions happening on the 28th of April, the EMEA sessions are happening on the 28th of April, which just means that it's a time zone friendly and you can get involved in the chats live as the sessions happen. I also want to mention that this event is free, so even if you're not available on the day, you can always sign up and take advantage of the content after the event as well. So quickly, just want to highlight some of the great speakers. So we've got Serena Williams is the tennis champion. She'll be on stage along with Dan Levy, I think that's the name, well known from Schitt's Creek. Also, we've got the CEO of Pfizer, and another person that I'm really want to see and I'm so excited about is the CMO of Peloton, as I think they've had an amazing digital transformation year during the pandemic. But although we've got these great inspiring speakers, at Summit, we've got over 250 sessions and training workshops happening, and you can actually personalize your schedule across 11 tracks. The one where Marketo customers and kind of Marketo experts are speaking at is the B2B marketing and ABM track. So if you're able to look at all the tracks, definitely go to this one, because this is where you're going to see some great sessions. And I'm going to show you some of the great sessions that's happening. You also can bookmark some of your favorite sessions to watch later on demand. So if the session is happening and you're not available at that time, no problem. It'll be available on demand. You can also participate in the live chats during the session premieres. So once the session goes live, the speaker will be within that chat, and you can get involved and ask questions to the speaker. You can also download any of the presentations or content that supports that session, and you can also have an opportunity to network with Adobe product experts, sponsors, and peers. So if you have any burning questions around things that you want to know around Marketo Engage, this is your chance to really get involved and speak to those product experts. So I've just pulled out some of the sessions. Lead nurturing, there's a great training, 2-hour training workshop that you can get involved in, and it's called Beyond the Batch and Blast, Building Customer Relationships Through Nurturing. This is one of the lead technical instructors within Adobe. He's going to show how to use the engagement program to build that brand advocates. Also, we've got another session from, if my dog barks, I apologize. We also have another session called Don't Be a Basic Batch 2. This was actually a really successful session in Summit last year. And it's around how to architect your nurture to drive a unified global message. And you can track product interest to power a personalized experience. So we've actually worked with Jess on some of these nurture streams as well, and actually tagged all our content based on different types of interests. And now we can actually build these interest-based nurtures, which is really, really cool. And then you can, look into reporting on how you can report on nurtures. Attribution. Attribution is also a hot topic for us marketers. And this is around the why, what, and how of B2B marketing attribution. This is from Lead MD and Yodely. So they're going to talk all things around attribution, especially in B2B marketing. And this is going to be focused probably on the visible, focus on the visible product. ABM is another great topic. And this is actually something I'm definitely looking forward to seeing as well. So it's about ABM is good B2B marketing. So let's automate it. This is going to show, we actually do this as well within our ABM strategy. So how to set up smart lists to automate account selection, segmentation, and targeting for ABM. So, also using these smart lists in harmony with Marketo Engage AI-powered account profiling capability. So you can actually look at what accounts are your A accounts, right down to your D accounts, and how to then activate those account-based audiences across the new and existing marketing and paid media channels. So we do a lot of targeting using this strategy. And then we've got a Marketo Engage product focused. So if you're looking to see what the latest efficiency and productivity enhancing capabilities are for B2B marketers and sales users to drive better pipeline, this is definitely something you can look at. And they will be focusing on the Marketo Engage product. But there's loads of other sessions on event marketing, and specific speaking about Marketo Engage. There's one on demand generation that I'm actually hosting as well. So it's around our secret sauce to Adobe secret sauce to demand generation, also around marketing strategy and so on. So I will share the link in this chat, but just wanted to share some of the great content so you can get registered or not, which is totally up to you. But that's really all from me. Does anybody have any questions on Summit? All good.
Perfect. That was fantastic. Thank you very much, Kate. I'm already looking forward to your session. Of course, that is the hot ticket. Jen and Jess always do a fantastic presentation as well. So I love that was on your highlights. Thank you for that. So if anyone does have any questions for Kate, you can whack her a chat or a DM if you want to slide into those. And for now, we're going to move on to Amanda and Jules. So please take it away with forms.
All right. Hopefully my audio is a lot better now. Less echoey. Okay, great. I'll share my screen here. Okay, there we go. All right. Perfect. I like how you can see what you're sharing here. That's really nice. All right. So Jules and I recently participated in the skill exchange through Adobe. Basically, they had some champions, some people that have been in Marketo for a long time, kind of present on some tips and tricks that they've learned over their time inside of Marketo. And Jules and I presented specifically on forms. And the title was Get Information, the ultimate tips and tricks for your forms. And of course, as you can tell by the actual title, this is dedicated to Beyonce. It's very much Beyonce themed. So we have a bunch of gifts to hopefully keep you entertained throughout this presentation. First, we'll just do a quick introduction of ourselves. Adele, you already gave a great introduction already. I'm a marketing technology consultant at Etumos, 5-time Marketo champion. I've presented at Summit before, specifically around nurtures. So it's kind of like my first one on forms, really. And I co-lead the Houston mug. So if you guys are interested in joining the Houston mug at some point in time, just let me know. Jules, I'll pass it to you to introduce yourself.
So yeah, thanks. And also, Amanda, I am joining the Houston mug because you're doing that death by ROI thing. I think you're doing the big group.
Yes, yeah.
Look forward to that. So my name is Julz James. I'm a senior manager of marketing operations at Blue Prism. I am in Austin, which is always confusing when I speak to people because they think I'm in the UK. I have been using Marketo for a long time and have been a champ for a very long time. As Adele said, I've been around a bit. Spoken at many different summits, and always love presenting and talking about the ways in which you can use Marketo, because as we all know, there are 1,000,001 different ways to do things. And that's why forms are my thing right now, especially with compliance and stuff, and kind of seeing what extra things we can do with it. So hopefully you'll learn something new from this. And yeah, that's it really. Amanda, do you want to go through the agenda?
Yeah, definitely. All right. So we've broken up this presentation into 4 sections that will kind of give tips around each section. So the first one is countdown. So counting down the number of fields you actually have on your form by implementing progressive profiling. The second is checking on it. So making sure that you have validation and visibility rules applied to your actual forms. And then making you feel flawless with some HTML and JavaScript for prettier forms and forms that can actually kind of pre-fill and help people convert a lot faster. And then we'll give you sweet dreams with some velocity script that Jules has lined up. So we'll first start off with progressive profiling. So again, the whole point here is to lessen the number of fields that you have on a form, but then also increase the amount of information that you have in your database around the records that you have in there. So I first always like to touch on the profiling strategy or progressive profiling strategy that you can implement and how to actually get started if you're not there yet. If you are, this might be a little bit of a moot point, but it's always a good refresher to maybe pass along to someone newer in your organization, or just check to make sure you're thinking about things in the right way. So the first on here is kind of minimizing. So what are your form conversion rates? You want to minimize, again, like I said, the number of fields that you have on your actual forms. So you want to look at what your conversion rates are today. What is the basic information that you absolutely need in order to sync your records from Marketo to your CRM? Salesforce has things like first name, last name, company, email. Sometimes Salesforce admins can require a little bit more to be present in order to have a lead created in Salesforce. So it's definitely something you want to just make sure that you have all the basic information as soon as possible on a form so you can get people over to Salesforce or your CRM within a reasonable amount of time for sales to follow up. What are the basic points and data points that are needed by your BDRs to actually know who they take? So what does Salesforce or your CRM need to know where to route these leads once they enter into the CRM? These are basic information points that should drive what you need to start with on your actual form. The next in line here for the strategy itself is prioritizing. So in addition to your basics, you want to make sure you prioritize additional fields for that progressive profiling. And to do that, you can ask yourself these questions here. So what are you actually hoping to accomplish with implementing progressive profiling? Hopefully it's a higher conversion rate. It might be that you don't have good data completeness within your database, meaning that you have like 80% of your database missing a job title or something to that effect. But hopefully it's higher conversion rates. That's something that you can always strive for. And then what conversion rates do you actually, or what questions need to be on the initial form fill? Again, that is kind of being answered by the minimized. Anything in addition is what can be prioritized. And then what questions will you ask after your initial form fill and how are they prioritized? So here's where you get that information of, we don't have enough people with job title defined or job role or industry defined, and we need that for BDRs to really do like their best, or we need that for nurture to work at its best. That's the questions you just have to ask yourself when trying to start your progressive profiling. And then of course optimizing. So how do you actually report on success? Is it now you have 100% of the database that has job level filled out? So that's a success mark. Or your conversion rate went up. That's a success mark. Definitely something to keep in mind. And then how often do you evaluate what's needed? It's really good to evaluate what's needed and the priority of those subsequent fields. Anytime there is a change in strategy within marketing. If you have a new product and you're trying to define a persona for that product, or if you're taking a new initiative with the sales team or something, it could be that that question is no longer relevant and you should add another question into your mix. All of that there. So the actual progressive profiling implementation, this is a pretty quick video, but this is how to actually implement it within your forms. You will open up your form and then actually enable progressive profiling in the settings. So I'm just going to play this real fast so you can see what I'm doing here. So you'll enable it, and then in the form settings, there we go. It's going a little slower. And then you'll go in and then you'll see that little box appear, the progressive profiling box, and you just drag and drop what you actually want to put in there. And then the order that it's in definitely does matter. Make sure you you add in anything else you want, and then you go back and just verify that it's actually enabled, so then you can have that enabled on your forms. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go to the next slide. There's a bunch of documentation on this as well if you look at Marketo docs, so if you don't know how to implement it, but this is probably something that most people have tried at least once. So I'll go on to the next slide. So progressive profiling for actual personalization. So basically these questions and answers that you're getting from the forms that you're implementing, you definitely want to use that data and leverage it as much as possible. And here are the ideas of how to actually leverage. So being able to take something like that job level example and create a segmentation to then personalize off of will make sure that your conversion rates kind of spread from the form into actual emails, and then hopefully into actual MQLs that sales converts into more opportunities. So you can personalize your emails, you can personalize your web banners on your website, you can manage your ABM list and your LinkedIn ads as well by using this information and leveraging it within Marketo. Okay,
Amanda,
so the next,
yes. Amanda, I think Emily had a quick question.
Yes, question.
I did have a quick question, sorry. And maybe relevant to, some of us that have to work in EMEA. So a lot of the time on forms, you have to include that GDPR tick box. And then if you put in progressive profiling, it kind of messes up the whole look and feel of the form. Have you come across this, or have you got any tips for that?
Yes, there is actual code. I think Stanford wrote it because, of course, but there is actual code that, because I know it usually like appears below it and then it just like looks really weird. But there's code that will force it to the bottom. So then your progressive profiling fields will appear before that checkbox. Also, I'm interested in like talking about this further if we have the time, because I've seen it with some companies, at least US based, that once you have checked that box, it kind of like anytime you're getting the actual progressive profiling and clicking a link through email specifically, that box no longer appears for you. But I'm not sure like how. I'm definitely not a lawyer, so I don't know if that's like a practice that is very common.
Area. Yeah, I think the company I'm thinking of, we used to, we had to have it there. So it was always just the first one in the progressive profiling or the first one in the and it just looked really wrong and weird. But the tip, I will check that link.
Yeah. And I'll send it to you too if you want to distribute, or just ping me on Slack or something, or LinkedIn. I'd be happy to like share the actual link. I'm sure I found it somewhere, but it's definitely on community, so you can get to it that way.
Emily has certainly started something. So we have a question in from Chloe as well. It just says that she has a question about the GDPR form and that checkbox.
Yeah, so I know this is not a GDPR session, and I know that none of us are lawyers. So I know that there's probably no right answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So I'm redoing our preference center, and I'm adding that checkbox to all of our global forms. Mm-hmm. But does anyone know if the Munchkin code changed, or if there's some sort of script that can be written to have that checkbox only appear if the value in our instance is null? So it's kind of like profiling.
Yeah, you can use visibility rules for that. You should be able to use visibility rules that says if the value is null, show it.
But if the value is null of the same field that I'm trying to show?
Yeah.
Another field, like a yes, no one or something that you could.
Yeah, I've implemented it like a couple of different ways where we use a whole separate field, but then also where the field is no longer a checkbox, it's actually a string, and then it's either true or false. So then you go in and then you only show it, I guess, for that specific reason. But yeah, it's there should be a way there's definitely ways to work around it. And Jules, I'm thinking too, like, I think that's how we did it, even though it was like true or false. I think we just pre-filled it, so then it was true, and like they would have to mark it false. Yeah, there's definitely ways though to.
Amanda, I've just been through a similar thing with our legal team, and you have to always show the GDPR. You cannot have any pre-fills in Europe. It has to be an open checkbox that somebody physically has to check once. You don't necessarily have to go to the double opt-in, but you do have to show it that first time. So even though somebody's already approved, they have to do it for each form. Well, that was our legal team's view on it.
So you're saying that if they, on day 0, I come to a website, I check that tick box to opt in, and I'm in Europe. Every time I come to that site, that checkbox has to be empty.
Every time every time you fill in a form. Yeah.
And if they don't check that tick box, is that implicit non-consent, like them opting out essentially?
you cannot have implied consent in any way. So it has to be that they physically, so the box has to be empty, they have to check it, and that is where the consent is then granted.
Every time for a European
They
country.
visit the website and go to and fill in another form to ask for, say, some more gated content. You cannot assume and think it's implied consent. They have to tick again, because you don't, unless you've got very strong unsubscribe rules and fields in there, but it's still belt and braces. You'd want them both. You can't always rely on the unsubscribe.
So
All
we
right.
actually, with our previous implementations at the company that I was before and before that, we were B2B only, so we could have a slightly more grey area in terms of the law. So GDPR is very core, does differentiate between people, so individuals that are using non-business email addresses, and business entities, which isn't actually an individual. So you can argue it both sides in legal terminology. But if you are B2B, you can show the checkbox once, get them to opt in, and you don't have to show it again, as long as you're offering them opportunity across your entire site to opt out. And that should still be the same at Dynatrace, but I think Colin has stepped away, so he can't confirm, but it is still the case at IFS.
It's the case.
Yeah, and what you say, that is right, Adele, and because you've already got if you've got a contract with that person, if they're business to business, and you've got some kind of contract for a service or product with them, i.e. they've been an existing customer, then that is different to B2C.
Yeah, B2C is really risky.
It comes down to preference of legal folks at the end of the day. The person who's going to stand in court and protect your business against anybody trying to prosecute you is the person who has to make the decision at the end of the day. Most companies are putting it on every form, but it doesn't change the status if you're already opted in for most businesses. So if you've already filled it out once and you've opted in, then if you have to enable it again, the other option is you make it mandatory. So you give them value exchange. You have to make it, you have to check the box in order to get the exchange. That's the other way that I've seen it work quite a lot.
The problem with that is that actually goes against all GDPR rules of giving the freedom of choice of being able to opt in or opt out. So that's a real mandatory checkboxes. And again, it was all based on legal regulations. Like I can tell you that we only have about 8 in explicit opt-in countries where they show the checkbox. Everyone else just gets a statement, because it's whether it's a soft opt-in country, a B2B exemption country, an email opt-in country, a double opt-in country. So it really does depend on what your legal team, like my legal team, I work with them very closely. They're in the UK, and we literally went through country by country and looked at whether we're opt-in, opt-out, B2B opt-in, soft opt-in. And so we have different rules based on the country. So it's a hard one, because every lawyer, every legal person is going to have a different understanding of it, and based on where your head office is or where your other head offices are. We have head offices across the globe, so we can work on different regulations depending on the country that they're coming in from. A suggestion I just made to Chloe was you could potentially have the checkbox showing for everyone when they first come in, and then if they've come in and checked the checkbox the first time, you could show the statement based on opt-in being true. Show them the statement, so when they're clicking the submit button, they're actually still agreeing to a statement, even though they're not technically checking a checkbox, and it's still kind of mandatory, but it is a very gray area of those. And we're going to talk about visibility rules and the different ways in which you can set it, and this is the exact example of why visibility rules are so important when it comes to GDPR, and it really does rely on what your legal team wants you to do. I've worked in companies who they have the checkbox for every single person. I've worked in companies where they have just a statement. Like they're like, well, everyone, if they fill in the form, everyone has to have it. I've worked in places where they have a mandatory checkbox, but they don't deal with EMEA. So it's really, it's always a difficult one. But you can do a lot of this with those visibility rules, unless you're just playing in a form. So that you could have a checkbox for everyone, and then once the checkbox is completed, it only shows the statement. And that could be a really cool way to get around showing the checkbox every time. But same as I have a smart campaign that if they don't check the checkbox and they're an email opt-in country, they get they don't get unsubscribed, but their email opt-in becomes false. So they're still in the system. They're not unsubscribed because they haven't unsubscribed, but they haven't checked the checkbox to opt in again. Does that make sense? There's like different ways around it in which you can keep the data, but not maybe market to them if they don't check it.
Yeah, and what you say about the countries is relevant. So our company took the decision that would go with the harshest or the most compliant, which generally is Germany. So the Germans were the ones that sort of introduced the double opt-in, never mind the single opt-in. They had to go that extra step. We've actually just relaxed back from that double opt-in to single opt-in, but it's still on every form that you have to check the box and consent. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like I say, it's down to legal and what they impose on you.
Yeah. So with GDPR, it's kind of one of those things I reckon that we could all talk about for the entirety of this session, because anyone that markets in EMEA gets properly fired up when it comes to GDPR. So in interest of getting through Amanda and Julz's session, if it's all right with everyone here, we'll just table that one and we can come back to it on the later session if that's okay. And we'll definitely add that to the agenda, because I think we could all just natter on about that for all of time, if that's all right.
Different rules. Yeah.
Yes. Well, we'll talk about visibility rules, so kind of a good segue for sure. So starting out is validation. So essentially just checking on what they're actually filling out and making sure that it aligns with what you want inside of your database. So I have a good screenshot here, basically on validation messages within your actual form. So you should be able to apply this, I believe, to any like open text field that you have. But your validation message, specifically for email, if you enable this and keep it standard, it's just going to make sure that the email address contains the @ symbol and then .com when you're actually filling out the form. So it's a good way to just like enable this, make sure you're actually getting people into your system that have a valid email and not just saying, you know, their first name in that field. Really good to implement. The next point, yeah, there you go. So that's how it actually appears, and you can customize this via like through language, which I'll skip ahead with that. So you can do phone numbers as well, and you can customize this validation message. I know it's like +44 plus, you know, it's just set up differently in different countries with the actual phone number piece of it. So it's definitely something you can go in and actually manipulate that validation message to actually view what you're looking for when you're actually filling out a form. So something great to implement. Here we go. You can also say it in a different language. So you can change your settings for your validation message. You just go into settings where you would enable the progressive profiling portion and then show your error language. And then you can change up that error language for the actual, based on the actual form that is being presented. Okay, visibility rules. I think this is, Julz, was this yours or mine?
Pretty much what this was
okay,
mine.
There you
go. So visibility rules, for some reason it's taken a little bit of time to show up, but I have it on my other screen, so there we go. As we just talked about, visibility rules based on countries, especially used and most predominantly used for GDPR, email opt-in, and especially now in the US for states, because California has CCPA, Texas is about to bring in one. I think, is it Virginia has its own kind of regulations that are coming out. Brazil has the LGPR regulation. So the two main reasons, obviously, for using visibility rules is one, being able to show state after country. And not everyone needs to collect that. Not everyone wants to collect that. But if you are working in the US and you want to obviously make sure you're compliant with CCPA, which is basically GDPR, but not quite as strict, you can do that based on picking the country. And then the other way around it, obviously, is for those checkboxes and statements. So, Amanda, can you hit the play on the video? I want to see if it should show the different options that we have coming up. There we go. It's a very, very short video, and I'm sure you will see how it works. So nothing is shown when no country is selected. Albania is, believe it or not, an email opt-in country. So it shows a statement with a privacy policy statement followed by the email opt-in. And then Islands is an opt-out country. So it just shows the statement. So depending on the country, depending on the email opt-in rules, and this is one differentiation that I have to make a lot with a lot of people, and I think people don't always pull the two apart, is GDPR opt-in and email opt-in are two different things. GDPR opt-in is all about the data storage. Email opt-in is about obviously being able to email people. So that's why I think I said in one of the comments, like really look at what those email opt-in rules are for each country, because a GDPR opt-in and email opt-in actually gives you a bit more freedom, because not many countries are full-on email opt-in. But obviously the whole of EMEA, or the whole of the EU, sorry, is GDPR opt-in. So, and we make that a statement. So the GDPR is just a statement on every single page, and it just says, we're going to keep your information. Please check our privacy policy. That's all that really GDPR is asking everyone to do. Our privacy policy talks about how long we're going to keep that data for. The email opt-in is where it comes to the marketable data that we can actually use. So we were able to increase our database by kind of using these country-specific rules, not just a blanket rule, by about 20%. When we actually went through the database and went, actually, we realized that we were using email opt-in for everyone, but actually only, like I said, I think we are running about 12 countries that are actually email opt-in. They physically say email opt-in, although we just added South Korea, so we're now at 13 countries that are email opt-in, and everyone else is either a soft opt-in or a B2B exemption country. We also have regulations around what classes as a legitimate interest or creating a contract with us when they fill in the form. But yeah, so that was my GDPR spiel, but that's obviously the reason why we use that checkbox. So Amanda, if you can
Sorry, I had a quick question before you move on. How maintainable is that? Like, who's keeping their eye on the legislative changes in each of these countries just in case something like that changes?
So thankfully we have an excellent legal team, and they keep an eye on it. And obviously when I keep a check on it every few months, so like every quarter I'll go in and see if I can find any new information. And then every time we get a new country, so like we just added a South Korea mini site with South Korean forms, and obviously all translated. The first thing I did is I spoke to legal and said, this is a new country that we haven't talked about before. Can we go and find out? And then we found it was an email opt-in country. And I was like, oh crap, okay. So now like we had to change everything to appeal to basically make sure that South Korea was opt-in. Every single one of these visibility rules had to be updated on the forms. This is why I'm thankful for global forms, because I only had to change, I had to change about 70 forms, versus if we weren't using global forms, we would have been changing about 600 or 700. So it was fun. But yeah, I check quarterly what I can find, like, and I obviously sign up to all of the different legal sites. But then I really do rely on our legal team, because she's really hot on all those regulations. She has a whole plethora of legal documentation she uses. No worries. So yeah, man, if you can play this video as well. But yeah, I'm sure if you haven't played with visibility rules, this is how we get them set up. It's being able to just show the different information. And I think I suggest to maybe to Chloe is, because we can obviously pick a checkbox, or we can pick a value of when we want to hide or show. The beauty of visibility rules is it doesn't have to be when you're using them. The field that you're using does need to be visible on the form, but you could have it hiding. Like you could have a hidden field that it's like the email opt-in, and if it's true or false, because if it's pre-filled, you could have it kind of hidden, opt-in, and then just show the statement. There's lots of kind of ways in which you can play around with it. Like I said, it does have to be on the form itself, but it doesn't have to be showing. So I don't know if you saw in that drop down that all the UTM fields were populating as well. So like if you had a temporary hidden email opt-in checkbox that isn't the actual checkbox you use on your form, and if that's true, show the statement. If it's false, show the checkbox. And you can add multiple visibility rules to the same field as well. So it's not that you don't just have to have one visibility rule. You can have multiple. I'm going to hop in and I'm going to ask a question about that. Do all of these statements, visibility rules, whatnot, do they work if you're embedding your Marketo forms onto WordPress? All of our forms are embedded. We have maybe 7 Marketo landing pages. Every single one of our forms is embedded on landing pages. Onto helping run these. Nope. Okay. No, it's all running in the form itself. All right, thanks. And obviously, like if you want to do pre-fill, Sanford, surprise, surprise, Sanford has the code to obviously embed to make pre-fill work on embedded forms, because pre-fill does not work on Marketo landing pages because of all the regulations they brought out, but Sanford's pre-fill code does work on embedded forms. So like if you want to show the pre-fill stuff, it's really good for progressive profiling, because progressive profiling, even though pre-fill doesn't work, progressive profiling will always hide the fields that are already populated, because it's not technically a pre-fill, but Marketo knows that value exists. So there are ways in which you can make pre-fills or not pre-fills work. But yeah, this all I've never added any extra code to any page that I've put these forms onto to make it work. And I'm finding you Sanford's coding. I'm actually Googling it. I've just found the Marketo 2.0 field order code, and I'm just I'll second. And I know that there's the coding for the pre-fill as well. I will get it all from his blog. I've got it all bookmarked somewhere. Zoe just asked a question. I think I saw your question before, Zoe, as well. Can you use visibility rules with progressive profiling? Yes. I'm saying yes, but I don't think you can on the actual fields that are in the progressive profiling box. I think you can use for the ones that are outside the progressive profiling box. Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct. Yeah. It's yeah. I'm trying to think of like the last time I had progressive profiling plus visibility rules. Yeah, I think you're right. Oh. We can confirm. Okay, I was like, sure, we can multitask and confirm.
Oh, exactly. Cool. So yes, hop to the next slide. So yeah, they are the basics of visibility. The next slide just shows the different types of visibility rules. One caveat that I always talk about when it comes to visibility rules is if you are using things like country visibility rules or states, whatever it is, you cannot copy paste the value that pops up in the drop down box, as I have discovered dismay once. Can you get to the next slide? Why is it not skipping?
Wait, now I went too far. Okay.
No, I can still see.
Okay,
That's it. There you go. That's one. That's right. No. So if you look in the country where it says country is, and it's got a list of country names, do not try and copy paste that list of country names and paste it into other forms. You have to go into every select the countries that you want the checkboxes or the opt-in statements to show on. I discovered this when I built out 15 forms and just was like, this is great, copy pasted it, tested it and wondered why it wasn't working. Yeah, so just a caveat, if you are using visibility rules, you have to go and select the values that you want to use for that visibility rule. You cannot copy paste it in there. And the cool thing is, like, you don't have to hold down Control or Shift or Command. Like, you can literally just click through them and select them. It's always fun. Like, I was doing a form recently in Russian and trying to select the countries that I needed to have the visibility rules showing in Russian and in South Korean is a bit of a pain. So just take some time working through them, because it's always fun. And just don't copy paste. That's just my big thing. So that's the big thing about opt-in forms and visibility rules. And I'm actually, when Amanda gets onto her section after I talk about some JavaScript stuff, I'm really going to go and quickly have a play in the form and see if I can get visibility rules to work on profiling. But let's have a look at HTML and JavaScript. So I'm going to start and look at some just real, surprise, Sandy's name pops up again, some really cool JavaScript when it comes to forms. So some people like to have or want the option to be able to show multiple forms on a page. The one place I've seen this work really well is for subscription centers. So you may want to have a subscription center where it's just one box is you just want to put an email address in because they want to unsubscribe, and then you may want a form underneath that's actually the subscription center form. You may want to have it as two actual pop-up forms. So I'll show you on the next page in a second. If they want to unsubscribe on one thing or just update preferences, because if someone wants to unsubscribe, they may not want to see that full preference screen and have all of those options. They literally just want to fill in an email address and hit submit. AWS actually did a really good version of this. They actually had two pop-ups, two forms on one page. And if you're using different forms, so different form IDs, it's really, really easy. It purely is just form ID, and then basically add the second form ID in the code. You can use the same form multiple times on a page, but that does require a lot of extra coding. It's all in Sandy's blog. I'm not going to spend too much time through it. But if you want to pop to the next slide, I'll show you the example of having the two forms for pop-ups. Essentially, the example that I used was for one of my clients. They wanted to have basically a way that people could nominate people for an award, or they could nominate themselves. And obviously, they didn't want to have multiple pages showing. They didn't want to have like a nominate page for yourself or a nominate page for someone else. They wanted it all in one place. So this was a real simple way to show. I don't know where that second box, where that third box disappeared to. There it is. There it is. So this is basically just a pop-up form. So if they want to nominate themselves or nominate someone else, you can see in the coding that it literally just has two different form IDs. It's really simple. It's actually fairly straightforward, which is nice. So you can literally click self-nominate. The self-nominate form would come up. Marketo would trigger off that self-nominate form being filled in. Or if you want to nominate someone else, they click the button, the nominate someone else form came up. And again, it would trigger off that form. The downside of this is it is pretty hard to maintain because these all have to be local forms. You cannot use global forms for this because it just gets very, very messy. But if you do want to do stuff like subscription centers or nominations or other ways to register, like if you have people want to registering guests for an event, this is another way you could do it. So you can register yourself or register someone else. You could have that through two different forms as well. So there's lots of ways in which you can play around with these multiple forms. And it really is just having different form code on there. So that's pretty cool. Chloe's just asked, can the subscription center be a global form? Yeah, because you're only going to have one subscription center. So you could have a subscription and unsubscribe, just those two forms, because they're technically not really going to be used anywhere else. That's a cool way in which you could use that. So yeah, they could be global forms, but like that nominate thing, because it's so specific, I wouldn't use global. They have to be local. But yeah, subscription centers could be. Like you could have, I'm going to see if I can find the example because it was on the AWS site and it literally had like unsubscribe or update preferences. They were the two buttons, and two pop-up forms appeared based on what someone
Yeah, they also
do.
have a subscription
really
center based on like your category of product or something like that. So it's like, yeah, basically like what are you subscribed to that you don't want to subscribe to, pretty much, like but it lists like different product categories, and then you can have your subscription center there. So like you want to opt in for events and email and all of that for like that specific product category. I think that's a good use case for this as well.
Yeah, and it's such a simple little thing that people don't, I think, always realize that you can do. But it has such a powerful effect. If you really want to start getting, like, we're about to update our preferences center, and this is one of the things that I'm going to be working on, is making sure that I can have the two pop-ups that just say like, if you want to unsubscribe, click this one. If you want to do everything, and it saves having a separate unsubscribe form, and it always looks really random, just like the little box with the email box with the button, like on this entire page. Like you can just have it as a little pop-up on the same page as the preferences center, so people get the option to do both.
Cool. All right, I know we're, I think we got enough time to get the rest of this done. So one thing, we'll kind of switch over to JavaScript, and one thing that I have actually implemented for clients before is the ability to take a UTM and actually pre-fill the form based on what is in that URL. This is really like a good use case for, you know, pre-filling that country field. If you have that in if you're tracking that in your UTM, like it's this campaign, but this country within that campaign. Also like industry, if your campaigns are for specific industries that you're targeting. Lots of use cases for this, I think, on taking that specific URL that they clicked on, using the UTMs within it, and actually pre-filling the form. I'll show you a video. It's like pretty quick, but it goes through really fast. But this is essentially how it works. It's reading that UTM code at the top there. So in this case, it's like country, and then as you refresh the page to actually go to that, yeah, it's pretty fast. So I think I did some screenshots here. Yes. There we go. Okay. So basically it's taking like your topic and saying like, okay, what are you actually interested in? This client had like a bunch of different interests for their actual business product lines. And it's taking that UTM and just populating that field with, it's basically taking code that says, if the UTM contains OS, then populate this field as organizational strategy. And then if country is CA within the UTM, then populate Canada as the actual field value. So it's pretty cool JavaScript that it was a developer at Etumos that put this together, but they worked for Citrus before. I think they had it in their brain before they even came to Etumos side. But it's cool stuff. Yeah, I think it's really cool things that can kind of show off what you can do with JavaScript in itself. Another JavaScript code that is super easy to apply, and this is also on the community, the code itself, is applying the unsubscribe to uncheck all of the checkboxes that are previously checked. So if someone goes to an actual landing page, preference center, they have like 3 boxes checked, you uncheck or you check the unsubscribe, it automatically checks all those boxes for them. So there's no confusion once you actually get that data within your system. But yes, I'll make sure we follow up and give you some code. I think I have the link here in the speaker notes. So I'll put that in chat. Okay, I'll pop to the next one. The confirm email address code for one field to kind of match the other value. I know this is more common with B2C, but if it is something that you run into, there is also, we just scour Marketo community, really. That's my job. But there's just like a lot of code on Marketo community that is hidden that we're bringing to light. There is JavaScript that you can apply to make sure that email address is actually matched. If you do have a form that's trying to set up like an actual user for a product that you have or something, this is a really good use case to apply this code. It's just looking at that field and making sure the second field has the exact same value as the first one. Cool. Okay, so we'll move to velocity use cases, and Julz has an awesome explanation on this.
Yeah.
Example.
So velocity is one of those things that I can't wait to use more because the stuff you can do with it is just insane. But a really good example of velocity, and I've got a couple of examples to show, but the first one was content delivery. So going to an event and with that, so going to an event and not wanting to take millions of brochures with you when it was in-person events, or having a content page at one of your events that are virtually online. The way that this works is essentially someone fills out a form and you basically served up the options of which pieces of content they would like to receive, because I know we all send out like those autoresponders when an event happens, and thank you very much for joining the event. These pieces of content might also be useful. Most of the time, the content that we're sending out isn't useful to everyone. You may be sending out 2 or 3 pieces of content and someone only wants to read one of them. Or you may have 5 pieces of content that are really useful, but no one actually, you don't want to send 5 pieces of content in one email because it's a lot. This form basically says if you select which piece of content you want to receive, that's the only piece of content you're going to get in the email that gets sent out to you. It's really cool because, again, they can say, actually, I want a piece, all these 6 pieces of content look great, the forms that we set up. I think they had, I want to say, about 6 or 7 pieces of content on there. And everyone was selecting like 1 or 2 pieces of content. So when they got the email straight away at the event or after the event, they were only receiving the content that they were interested in. I actually spent some time, Revenue Pulse was showing me how to do all of this for one of my clients and their clients as well. So it was really cool to learn how to use the velocity scripting for doing this, because again, it means that you can send out the content that people actually want to receive, not just generic content that everyone may get through the door. The other way of doing this, Amanda, if you can skip to the next one.
There we go.
There you go. Oh, I forgot I put the code in. So this is the code. So if you ever play with velocity scripts, this is probably one of the simpler ways of doing it. I like putting velocity script in individual tokens. You don't have to do it that way. I prefer it that way, but just I find it much easier to look at, because if you look at the script that's in here, this is all for one token. And if I was doing like 5 or 6 pieces of content in one token, for me, it gets a little bit confusing. So I just keep them as individual tokens. And it's essentially saying, it's very tiny, but at the top, it's basically saying, if trade show content 1, so piece of content 1 equals 1, so they've hit yes on the button, which basically checks the checkbox behind the form, please send in the email, send piece of content number 1. So the tokens that say trade show content 1, 2, 3, 4, if they only select piece of content 1, it's only going to serve them up piece of content 1 in their email. It's not going to show these hidden tokens, like it's not going to suddenly have trade show content 2 token and trade show content 3 token. It will only show what they would like to receive. So it's fairly kind of simple velocity script. And like I said, this is kind of where I've been starting to dip my feet into the water of figuring out what I can do with velocity. But this was kind of stage 1, and then stage 2, which is the event session selection, was kind of the next way to kind of take velocity script and go that extra mile with it. So with the event session selection option, we had a big virtual conference. There was this example is showing you 16 different sessions that were available. We wanted users to be able to actually select again the sessions they want to attend. So not just the piece of content they want to download, but the actual sessions that they would like to attend. So this page is actually an Unbounce page, and Unbounce has a really cool feature with JavaScript where basically I had hidden boxes on every single one of these sections where it says add to session agenda. And then the JavaScript that is available in Unbounce allowed me to basically move all of those checkboxes to session 1, session 2, session 3 will actually go and placed on where I put the hidden fields within the Unbounce page. So that was a really cool kind of thing that I could do with the JavaScript. But then on the back of that, people who, again, 16 sessions, the first time we ran this, if people signed up, they literally couldn't pick the session they wanted to attend. We had to send out 16 registration confirmation emails. So they got put into 16 different webinars. They got 16 confirmation emails. It was very ugly. It was a bit of a mess because people did not want to receive 16 emails for a start. And obviously it was 16 add to calendars. It was just too much information. What we were able to do with this is say, when they pick session 1, 3, 5, and 7, we're going to send out one email using the velocity script that serves them up the link to sessions 1, 3, 5, and 7. It serves up obviously the time and the date, and then an add to calendar as well. So Amanda, if you can skip to the next slide, it will show, again, the script is really tiny, but it's kind of fairly simple script. That just basically says if they selected session 1, obviously then shows that the code that basically formats that table. So the event's at 9 o'clock. It's got all the ID information in there. Where it's got the session link, so we were using On24. On24 was actually available to provide basically the links, the custom, like the member webinar URLs that most people use. What we did is actually we looked at what that URL actually looked like, and then in each velocity script we just changed the session ID, and then it was a session ID and it was like an event key in every single one of those links. So actually the link isn't the member webinar URL, it is just a link, but it has the token of email address in there. So when they clicked the link, it went straight to through the registration process to their session, so they didn't have to go through and kind of try and re-register if we use that link. The cool thing about that is with velocity tokens, you can use tokens, but only some tokens within velocity tokens. An email address is one of those tokens you can use within a velocity token. So again, like you can see on the side, there were 16 different sessions, but on the actual sessions that I picked, this was just an example. I think I picked like 6 or 7 sessions. So I'm only being served at what I actually want to see. In the back end, it was a bit more complex because there was 16 different webinar programs. There was tons of request campaigns. They're like, if session 1 is true, send to webinar 1. If session 2 is true, send to webinar 2. I think the final session that we did for the second virtual conference, we had 32 different sessions. So it was a lot of setup in the back end, but it meant that all the users saw was they saw one form, they selected their sessions, and they got one email. Like they didn't have to end up with 1,000,001 different emails, 1,000,001 different links. And Warren just said he's added an add to calendar script as well. So I'm going to be stealing Warren's script to put the add to calendar in there as well. So yeah, it's a really cool way to be able to provide pieces of content that someone actually wants to receive, and then event sessions, especially because we're all doing virtual events right now, being able to provide that information as well. So that is the end of our mammoth.
Yeah.
All the stuff you can do with forms. Hopefully we've not melted everyone's brains. There are things that I'm still want to do with Amanda's stuff that I want to do as well. So like I'm still playing with forms and we'll be playing with forms for a long time to come.
Well, thank you. I know we've run over our mug time, but I think it's been really educational. No, we had the question session before, and I think I'm just thinking out loud. So Adele and Kate, nod. Invite you to our London Mug Slack channel so you can add all this healthy code, and Warren can add his code in there as well. Just to say thanks. I mean, I don't know if we probably don't have any time for questions unless there's like maybe one burning one, but I just wanted to say that obviously we've got the Adobe Summit coming up, and also we are looking for speakers for our next mugs. I know we've got a hot topic on lead scoring, so if anybody wants to present, please reach out. And if you want to present on anything else, I mean, we mentioned GDPR, so I mean, we could have a session. But if you wanted to present on anything, I know that it is a requirement to present a mug if you want to be a champion. Even a young champion like Chloe's little one there, but you know, feel free to reach out if you would like to present on anything, and we can help you with the session. Or anyway, is there anything else we want to add, Adele?
No, I think just a massive thank you to Kate, Jules, and Amanda. It's been an absolute powerhouse of fantastic women-led content today. So thank you very much. I know there's going to be a ton of questions once everyone has finished and been able to kind of digest what's been covered, because I've taken so many notes that I feel like I was back at school. So it was really good. Thank you very much. And it was great to get everyone together. Yeah, it was great to get everyone back together again. So we are going to be planning our next mug for May, and we Kate, Emily and I will get together, get some dates, and we will start publishing and promoting it as soon as we can. But as Emily said, any topics you want, please come to us. We're looking for speakers. Just be as vocal as you usually are. That would be fantastic. But for now, it's time to enjoy a Wednesday afternoon that has been uncharacteristically sunny in the UK. So I'm going to go and sit in the garden before the sun disappears.
Haven't you got snow on Monday?
Yeah, but we had snow on Saturday. Can you believe? Crazy.